Good afternoon. This is Oshun Decide Studio in Oshobo, coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. I'm Kemi Akiwande. The election process is ongoing, accreditation and voting proper by now done with, and moving on to the next stage of sorting and collation of voting materials and papers. Sorting and collation is expected at the moment to be taking place in 3,010 polling units across the state. We have reactions from our reporters across the state, and we also have, we know that the election that took place today in Osun State, women constitute 52% of the voting population, and we would like to know that will the women determine who wins? We will get to know as things unfold, but at the moment, I have with me in the studio the former minority leader, Nigerian Youth Parliament, Semi Adabanija. You're welcome. And a public analyst, Dr. Olabode Ojoniyi. Glad to have the two of you in our studio.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Semi, you visited some of the polling units. What was the voting pattern like?
Okay, really, I want to believe that in terms of results, maybe we'll still be waiting for that in terms of voting pattern.
Definitely.
But at least you feel, in places that I visited, I've been able to see that the demography is so mixed in the sense that you have a lot of aged people, a lot of young people, a lot of middle-aged people. And you also find out that from the high to the middle to the lower class of the society, all of them have actually trooped out en masse to exercise their franchise as far as this election is concerned. Yes, the last election we had in Osun was even more than 4 years ago. It was in August when we had it in 2014. So a lot of people have been expectant, and the day is here. So as you have said, in most places now, we'll be moving towards sorting and counting. But in the real sense of it, I feel that people have come out en masse to say the person that will rule them as their fifth executive governor of the state, and the person who will be at the saddle for the next 4 years is somebody that he can say a large number of the population actually endorsed.
Now, most times when we talk about people voting and all that, there will be complaints about multiple thumb printing, votes accrediting without smart card readers. Did that come up today?
Okay, I feel that we still have a few issues in that regard. But the truth of the matter is I want to congratulate INEC and Nigerians that we are moving from where we used to be. INEC is fading out what we call incidence form. When a voter is not being able to get accredited because maybe the card reader cannot take in the thumbprint of such person, then the person has to try and keep trying. Maybe after the 4th or 5th attempt, then they will now do another recapture for that person on that card reader. I think that happened to a lot of aged people on the field today. Most young people who still have their thumbprints, maybe still very much intact, were able to scale through the accreditation process. So I think it happened to most aged people where I visited, and most of them were recaptured. But in the places I also visited, I think those on ground, the INEC officials were able to ascertain that they are the real owners of those cards before they did the recapturing, and I think that is very good. But I hope that we will move to a point whereby your card reader is able to be identified, and again, your thumbprint also goes into the card reader as soon as you want to vote. So I still believe that we will get there.
So how about the participation of women? They constitute 52% of the voting population.
Okay, yes, I want to say that a lot of women came out. And even in a place, I saw a very aged woman that had to come out, and immediately she came on the line. A lot of people gave her the opportunity, because that is one of the procedures that younger people should allow aged people to. So you find out that a lot of women came out today, as they have always done. Again, if I want to be a bit biased, let me also talk about my constituency. I feel that a lot of young people also came out. But the truth of the matter is, I believe that it would have been better if most of the leading political parties, if they had fielded younger persons as their candidates, or even deputy governorship candidates. So, but all in all, I think the participation of young people is also more than average.
I still want to take you up on the participation of women in Osun election. You know, 4 of the 48 political candidates here, they are women. And we have the youngest of the 48 as a woman too, 37 years old. So what's your take on that? What do you think that would translate in this election?
Okay, in the real sense, I think the woman in question has also been able to give a good account of herself. And I believe that we are also getting there to expand our democracy to the point whereby younger people are given the opportunity, women are also given the opportunity. If you merge the demography of women and youth, you find out that they constitute a very large percentage of the voting population. So I believe that presenting ourselves for service is something of courage. And I also want to believe, but in some analysis, there are no small and big parties. But I still feel that a lot of people feel that our party is relatively new. And to win elections in Nigeria, you need structures all across the constituencies. In this case, in Osun, we have about 332 wards. And like I said, over 3,000 polling units. Even some of the polling units were even broken down into 2 or 3.
Okay, Semi, let me take on Dr. Ujuni. You know, INEC said no use of phone at voting units. Now, that is just meant to stop the issue of vote buying. But issues came up concerning coded vote buying. We were talking about vote buying, now coded vote buying. Another vocabulary added, if I may say. So what really is coded vote buying?
Well, I think first, what has happened is that we have really improved. Especially we must congratulate and give kudos to INEC for the decision, because that has really helped to prevent this vote buy, or to minimize it. And now we have moved to this issue of coded vote buy. Well, that has come up out of desperation to win election at all costs. And I think the little I understand about this issue of coded vote buying is that there is somebody at a corner over there that is trying to look at where you thumbprint, the ballot paper. There is you have these political parties, and they already have the idea that if you are thumbprinting up, that will be APC. If you go down a bit, that will be PDP. And so there is somebody who probably has spoken to you that vote for us, and then the person is somewhere at the corner trying to look at you as you go to vote, and then trying to imagine or pick where you actually vote. Is it up or in the middle or down? And then you come out and the person feels assured that you have actually voted for a particular party, and then you are paid either probably between 1,500 or 3,000 or so, and the rest. Also, I think that is what is called coded vote buying. It's like an agreement, it's like a bargain, but it's out of that desperation because INEC refused to allow them going to the polling points with their phones.
So now that there is no use of phone at voting points, what exactly happened at voting points, Semi, when we are talking about the use of smartphones and now with the new vocabulary of coded vote buying?
Okay, I feel that there was high compliance as regards non-use of phones around the polling booths as you collect your ballot before you vote and stuff. So a lot of people had to drop their phones. And I think that is very, very commendable. But like my colleague here has said, politicians will always be politicians. They want to win elections and they don't want to be caught unawares. So they will always want to find a way out. So, like I said in some of our trainings and some engagement that we have with INEC and even the resident electoral commissioner, that it means that at every point in time, we must continue to be on top of our game because the civil society, INEC, and a good number of the security agencies, the media, and other stakeholders, most of us want credible elections. But it only seems that the other person or the other group at the other side of the divide are mostly the politicians who want to win at all costs. So we must also, all of us must be at the top of our game to make sure that we beat them to the game. But it means that they are devising a means now to get the votes to be bought. And but I believe that it means that what INEC has done to prevent smartphones at the polling booth has worked. And it also means that there will now also be a way that people will now be voting in the polling booth and somebody cannot look at you from behind.
Okay.
So maybe that will be the next level we'll be going.
All right, thank you very much, Semi. Before we go on, I would like us to take a look at some other issues like security and others. But before we do that, we would like to take on a report from one of us there on the field.
This is the river Osun, the venerated natural spring that is said to be the manifestation of the Yoruba goddess Osun, from where Osun State derived its name. Osun State is an inland state in southwestern Nigeria, created in 1991 from the old Oyo State, with a population of 3,423,535 by 2006 population census figure, with 30 local government areas. It is bounded in the north by Kwara State, east by Ekiti State and Ondo State, in the south by the Ogun State, and in the west by Oyo State. Osun State is home to several of Nigeria's most famous landmarks, including the campus of Obafemi Awolowo University, located in the ancient town of Ile-Ife. Other important cities and towns include Ilesha, Ilaragon, Iwo, Ede, Ejigbo, Ijebu-Jesa, Esauki, and Ife. Others. Indigenes of the state belong to the Yoruba race and comprise of Oyos, Ifes, Ijesas, Igbominos, and Osuns. Nigerians from other parts of the country and foreigners reside in the state and live together in harmony.
Yoruba people are known for their contemporary artworks, their rich culture, heritage, in the forms of Osun deity, popularly known all over the world, and for their rich cultural and contemporary arts. Under the contemporary art that Osogbo is known for worldwide, we have the contemporary carvings in the form of our deities, the Shangos, the Oya, the Oshun, the Obatalas, and so on. And Osogbo people are known for their rich fabrics making, that is Adire Ibile.
They are doing fine because they are not no fighting, no anything. You will see that three political parties, PDP, APC, and SDP are doing the same campaign the same day, at the same time, the same place, no fighting, no anything.
The culture finds expression in their arts, literature, music, and other social activities. From inception, Osun State has been governed by 4 military administrators and 4 civilian governors, including the outgoing governor, Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola. In Osogbo, Kole Adebayo, NTA News.
That in particular was a political history of Osun State. We'll now join our colleague in the Abuja studio.
Thank you, Kemi. Back to the Abuja studio. This is the afternoon transmission of the Osun Decides studio. My name is Muhammad Kudu Abubakar, and as usual, we still have the panelists who are here in the morning. And for introduction's sake, we have Oluwole Osaze Uzi, Director of Voter Education of INEC. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner of Police, Counter-Terrorism Unit, Department of Operations, Force Headquarters of the Nigerian Police Force, Asuko Amba is still here.
Thank you.
Also here is Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, political scientist.
Thank you very much. Good
Gentlemen, you're welcome back to this afternoon transmission of the Osun Decides studios here in Abuja. We gather from the Osun Decides studio in Osogbo that right now, what is going on in most of the polling units, Mr. Uzi will correct me if we are wrong, is counting of votes and likely collation. But from the situation room of INEC, what is really happening as far as the first process of the electoral process is concerned?
Thank you. I think the first stage has been generally successfully concluded. And by the first stage, I mean the arrival of materials, the sorting and the terms of the opening of polls. And at this stage now, it's past 2 o'clock, closing of polls. So some polling units have closed because there was nobody on the queue at 2 p.m., while most of the others that had people are concluding that part of the exercise. I was in the situation room, and so far, so good. We have monitors spread around the whole RAs and the whole state, the whole 30 local governments.
What is RA?
RA is registration areas, so around the registration areas across the state and the local governments as well. And so far, so good. Almost everything has gone in accordance with the plans enunciated by the Commission. So we're going to the next phase now, which you rightly observed, is the sorting of the ballots and then the counting of the ballots and declaration of the results in the polling units. Yes. And thereafter, then results will be declared in the polling units, and then will now shift to the collation stage. Collation at different levels. First of all, the registration area collation, where all the polling units in that registration area are collated, and then sent to the local government collation, where results from all the collation centers are now collated in local government for the final collation and declaration of results at the state level.
Well, we will come back to you to further expatiate on the process. But let me very quickly bring in the Commissioner of Police, CP Amba. What are you hearing from the field?
Well, I still have to re-echo from what the INEC chief had said. So far, so good. We've not had any serious incident, and we are rightly moving towards the next phase, which has to do with the sorting and counting. So that has to do with a little partial restriction of those that are to be there, like the party agents that will witness it, and trying to cordon off the area so that people can witness from a distance so as not to be chaotic. So far, I think it's been fairly well.
Fairly well, no any security incidents?
No serious breach or no serious security incident.
Well, the political scientists certainly must have observed so many things. In the early morning reports, we saw reports of our correspondents. I particularly note Hamis Rogo's report where he had interviews with the EU observer team and several others. What did you observe, or what have you observed so far?
Well, what I've observed so far is a continuation of a pattern that emerged from the Ekiti election. And that pattern has to do with quite a few number of things. One is the neutrality of the electoral management bodies, especially the stakeholders, specifically INEC. The problem we always had in the past is the neutrality of INEC as the umpire, where INEC always suspected of colluding with some political parties or some persons within some political parties to write election result or declare people that never won elections. I think that largely starting from 2015 is gradually fading out so that people could repose their confidence in INEC. The second organization that is always accused of colluding with politicians, again, is the Nigerian Police Force, or the entire security architecture that usually go to provide security. During the Ekiti state election, because of the character of the participant in the election, especially the outgoing governor, it was assumed that federal might will be brought to bear on the election to the extent that a lot of things would have been done to really favor the ruling party. Up to the end of the election, we're in the studio here. The representative of the police force, Mr. Lakani, I still remember, he was confident even from the very beginning that there was not going to be any security breach and that the election was going to go free and fair, and that they are there to maintain peace. And that was what actually happened. Then the last thing that emerged was the issue of vote buying. People are beginning to talk around this vote buying, and they're beginning to, but they don't really understand why there is intensity in terms of competition to buy votes. Now, what has happened in 2015 was the fact that card reader prevented a lot of parties to rig election. So that has made it practically impossible to write results, to do whatever they want to do. So because of the ongoing reform in INEC, for instance, if a polling unit, if a ballot box is snatched in a polling unit, that polling unit is null and void. So it means that even if you steal a ballot box, it's not going to be of any benefit.
You mean results from that polling unit will be cancelled?
Yes, it will be cancelled. It will be cancelled automatically. So, and then nobody is eligible to vote until the card reader ascertain your eligibility, that, okay, you are registered in this ward and in this polling unit, and then your name is on the voter register. So this very particular innovation in terms of curtailing rigging, behind the scenes rigging, has led to another device, because, you know, man is always like that. We tend to abuse the process, and then as we try to refine the process, we equally devise another means to ensure that we puncture the process. So the vote buying is a natural development that has come to replace the usual rigging. So for all of this to have come to the fore, I think I must congratulate INEC. What we need to do now is to ensure that the way INEC is doing, that there is a robust response to that, and which is part of the reasons why INEC said you can go to polling unit with your phone, but you cannot go to the cubicle where you are to print your ballot paper. So that what came out of Ekiti election.
So in other words, it's not that INEC stopped anyone from having his phone.
INEC did not stop anybody from having a phone at the polling unit, even up to the point of receiving the ballot papers. What INEC said is, the lessons learned from Ekiti is that people go to the cubicle, they vote, and then they take a snapshot of the party they voted for. They thumb printed, and then they take it to those that promised to pay them. And with that as evidence, they are paid. So INEC is now saying you can have your phone up to the point where you receive your ballot papers, but you cannot go to the cubicle where you are going to thumb print.
So what reports have you received from the civil society who are on ground?
Well, the report,
with respect to that,
the report that I've been received so far, except now that I'm listening to issues of coded vote buying. But for me, the measure INEC has put in place is fairly successful, because the cry of civil society is to ensure that vote buying is substantially addressed. So for me, it is something that is ongoing, though politicians may try to at least buy this vote. But
I think Mr. Osaze Uzi is itching to come in here.
Yes.
There are so many issues he wants to explain. INEC did not say nobody should have his phone with him.
No, not so. There's a restriction on the use of the phone after you have collected between the period you collect the ballot paper till after you cast your vote. You cannot use your phone. But prior to then, thereafter, please by all means use your phone. But the law protects the secrecy of the vote, and that's why it's called open secret. You receive your ballot paper in open, you indicate your choice in secret, and then you come out in the open to cast, to drop it in the ballot box. So it's fortunately and quite pleasantly, it's pleasant to note that the people of Ekiti have complied with this, contrary to the hue and cry by some political figures who apparently probably are benefiting from this issue of see and buy or vote buying, vote selling, and things like that.
Explain to us, what do you understand from the term coded vote buying?
I wish I could understand that. I can't say I understand what coded vote buying. Vote buying, vote selling are criminal offences. Section 124 of the Electoral Act makes that quite clear. And it's bribery. Let us not inducement. Let us not call it by any other means. When you say vote buying, it's almost as if it's a legitimate exercise. But it is illegitimate, it is immoral, it is illegal. And that is why we've had great success, especially with the religious leaders in this regard. It is against all the major religions in this land, you know. When you say somebody is guilty of bribery, there's a stigma attached to it. There's a moral repulsion attached to that. But when you say vote buying, vote selling, it almost glamorizes it. It sounds reasonable, but it is not. It is bribery, it's inducement. When you offer money for a person's vote, that is an attempt to bribe. And when you take money
from the reports you have had at the Situation Room, have you had any cases whereby the police personnel had cause to apprehend anyone with respect to this vote buying?
Not to the best of my knowledge. I came back from the Situation Room, but I'm aware of 1 or 2 arrests in terms of people having allegations that they may be involved in vote buying. I recall that one person, I think in one of the reports, the commissioners on ground confirmed that one person had a large sum of money, was 600,000 naira, had a large sum of money
on him
in his possession. That was the report we received on him. So obviously the security agents are looking into that. I think an arrest has been made, and they will carry out an investigation. If prima facie they've seen the offence is established, then they will hand over to NEPA prosecution.
I think Mr. Amber will want to tell us more on that.
Well, first of all, we just have to be careful. We should be critical of information we receive from the social media. For now, whatever it's on ground, we are informed that it has been very successful. Any case that we must have come across, I can assure you it's under investigation. It is then we can conclusively say this is this. But for now, I think the atmosphere is quite conducive for a free and fair election.
Well, gentlemen, I don't know what you have heard from the Situation Room. Yesterday and early this morning, we talked about the total number of registered voters, 1,681,930. And out of these, 1,246,955 are reported to have collected their PVCs. This presupposes that this is the total number of votes that are likely going to come out from this election. That is assuming that 100% of all those who collected PVC went to vote. Mr. Osaze, from what you have heard, are there any cases of persons, either male or female, who went to the polling unit but could not vote as a result because they don't have their PVCs, or the PVCs did not work, or the card reader did not register them?
No, if you don't have a PVC, you have no business in the polling unit. Unfortunately and regrettably, over 400,000 have not or did not collect their PVCs, even after the extension of the deadline for collection. It was supposed to be at 5 p.m. on Monday, but this was extended till Wednesday, 48 hours before the election. So if you do not have your PVC, you have no business in the polling unit. You will not be entertained. Of course, there are 1 or 2 reports of challenges in the terms of the card reader, authentication and things like that. But none of them, I think just about everything was sorted out in good time. So the maximum you can get will be 1,246,000, just over, for those who pick their PVCs to vote. So if you see any figure near that or beyond that, then you know that there's a problem. But that will not.
What this means is we will never have this result, the result when it comes out, we will not have total votes cast 2 million, for example.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
Now, let's look at the candidates. We've been talking about the fact that there are a total of 48 political parties
Yes.
who put in candidates for the election. Out of these 48, 4 are female.
Yes.
But you are telling us of other indices within the realm of the candidacies, if you like. Give us more insight to this.
Okay, thank you. For governorship candidates, of course, for
Four
a
of the
valid
female.
ticket, yes, 4 females. For a valid ticket, there must be a governorship and a deputy governorship candidate. And so with 48 political parties, you have 96 candidates and deputies. They're all candidates for this purpose. I think a total of 24, which is about a quarter of those are female. Good to know there are about 2 parties that both the candidates and the deputy are female. 2 of the political parties did that sponsorship. And their ages range between, of all the candidates, range between 31 years and 72 years. So it's quite a range. Educational qualifications, quite a number of them possess school certificates, but there are several lawyers, several master's degrees, and about 3 or 4 with terminal degrees with PhDs. So it's quite a range in terms of choices to be made. Different professions are accommodated amongst the 96 people who are there. Out of all these, 2 people are going to be returned as governor and deputy governor.
Abdurrahman Abu Hamis, what do you make of this?
Well, the political space has been widen enough. I think INEC has done a lot, abiding by the Constitution, to ensure that people are granted the right to meet the requirement to be registered as political parties, and then you can now contest for election. And the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has deepened that by signing into law the Not Too Young to Run bill. So, Ed Otil, this has equally opened, or it has expanded the scope or the conscription that goes with having just few political parties. So if you don't have money to compete within the big parties, you can have like minds, and then you go to register your party. And then, so what we would like to see maybe going forward as part of the innovation is to have a situation whereby you could register a political party to contest election in AMAC alone. Yes, so if you want to contest maybe at a ward level, but that, considering the way we operate in this land and climb, I think that will make our the ballot paper to be very long. But then in other land and climb, you could just come together to say you just want to contest local government elections, and then you have the right to register at that level, and then you contest, or state elections, for instance, election into state houses of assembly or things like that. So, but the way it is now, you have to make sure that you have presence in to that right of the states in the country. So with that gives you national spread. Then with headquarters in Abuja, so that has led to a situation whereby you go to some of the suburbs, you see somebody's security post as the national headquarters of a party, because the law says you must have presence at the center, and it is not all the parties that are big enough to have the resources to do that. But with what we're seeing so far, I think the space has already been expanded by the action of INEC, by registering more political parties, and then the president's assenting to the Not Too Young to Run bill. So that has really impacted on the political space.
Well, even though you made mention of the Not Too Young to Run bill, which is now an act,
yes,
they're also talking of not too old, the issue of election financing,
yes,
or the campaign financing.
yes.
Where does this all bring up, especially with the statistics we now have of almost 50-50 women and female and male candidates?
Yes. One of the things that I like to see in a democracy is when people are given the freedom within what the law stipulates to do whatever they feel like doing. As a youth, before you convince yourself that you're not too young to run, I think you must convince yourself about the stamina you needed to succeed in the race. So election financing is a challenge anywhere in the world, especially when you talk about liberal democracy. Liberal democracy is all about campaigns, having to hire a lot of irons, having to maintain the party, having to register, having to pay for one or two things in terms of logistics. And that is why even to campaign, even within a state, is enormous in terms of resources. So now, if that very particular bill did not scale through, it becomes a recipe for violence or for any other thing. God forbid, we are not hoping. What now? Nobody has been denied the right to run, so you can run as much as you want to run. But again, you must make sure that you have the stamina to win the race, which is the financing aspect. Then, if you cannot compete within the big parties, the door of INEC is open. By the time you meet the requirement, if you have all the spread, which is equally money, because every state you go to, you must have an office. Then you come to Abuja to equally look for a location where you can have an office. That again requires huge resources. So for me, as a youth, I would convince myself that before I want to run, I should be able that I have the wind that can sail me through.
Well, Mr. Osaze, let's come back to the electoral process now. We've talked a little bit about the first stage. Let's assume that 50 to 60% of the polling units have concluded, or those on the queue have now cast their ballots.
Yes, Franz, maybe just quickly, 1 second, quickly respond to that. You actually don't need offices before you can be registered as a political party. You only need an office in the FCT. You don't need state offices. All you have, at least members of your national executive, at least 24 of the 36 states must be represented in your national executive of the party.
That must be federal character.
In the federal character reflected in your national executive or by whatever name so-called. But you don't need offices in those states. I think that points out to
that must be an amendment, because I think
no, it's not an amendment.
Really?
That has since 1999. If you recall, when the Chief Ganifa Ami was leading Conscience Party and the others, PRP and others took INEC to court, part of the requirement was that they should have offices in 2/3 of the state.
Yes.
But that was struck down. That's not a constitutional requirement, so you cannot add that to your guidelines. This is not a constitutional requirement. So even in Osun that we're in now, a number of the candidates and their parties don't have offices in Osun. But that's what the law is. If Nigerians want to change the law, some people argue that it's desirable that they should. But so basically, that additional burden of having an office is not there. Okay. But at the same time, when you call for meetings, giving notices to them. Those who have emails will send emails to them. But going to their physical presence, physical office, they are not there. They're not on ground, regrettably. So that has its own, conversely, it has its own challenge in itself. So that has been the law since 1999. I think it was not the FEDECO time that you needed offices in the 36 states and under the transitional period under the regime of General Babangida. But since 1999, that has not been a requirement. That was one of the sticking points why those people took the commission INEC to court over that these things not being spelled out in the Constitution. You cannot add it as part of the requirements for registration. So the requirements for registration are very, very liberal. But you're right, in some democracies like India, you have regional parties, you have national parties, you have registered parties that are not recognized and things like that. All sorts of, each country takes the one that suits its own purposes the best. So yes, the next stage is that by now, 22 to 3, most of the, or just about all the polling ought to have finished. Because even if there's a queue, those who are in the queue at 2 p.m., in that 40 minutes or thereabouts, they would have been attended to. So the next stage is that sorting of the ballots. And sorting basically means look at each ballot. Is the vote clear? If somebody has marked the ballots between two parties, you can't tell whether it's A or whether it's B, then you put that aside as an invalid vote. So you sort out the invalid votes from the valid votes. If the back of the ballot paper has not been stamped and signed by the presiding officer, most likely it was smuggled in, you remove all those invalid votes from the pack. So you are left with just the one. Now, in doing that one, what the presiding officer does is shows everybody, the agents, look, everybody there sees it and puts the solid aside. You know, so it's sorting. Then the counting is to now count sort it out, and then those for this party, those for this party, those for that party, you sort out the parties, and then you now count all the things, and then from there you make a declaration. The presiding officer makes a declaration of the results in that polling unit. He signs the copies of results, gives it to political party agents that they are present who wish to sign, and they sign it, and then from EC 60E, which is called the People's Result Sheet, he paste that one in the polling unit so that everybody can see for you. Then that's why we even encourage the camera phones. You can take snapshots of that and do whatever you want to do with it for record purposes to show. So the party agents have their own result sheet.
Who should be remaining within the vicinity of that process?
Everybody who's interested, everybody who is registered in that unit. The security agents, accredited observers, and the INEC officials. All the security agents are accredited for that purpose, for that unit, because even if you're in uniform and you're not accredited, you shouldn't be anyway. So it's not by virtue of you being a security official in uniform, but the fact that you're accredited for that process. So that, for example, aides and security aides of VIPs, quote unquote, don't go there to disrupt things. You must have business. Anybody who has business in that polling unit has a right to be there if he or she so chooses to be there.
But is it the responsibility of the security men, or that is, in this case, the police, to make sure they weed out those who are not supposed to be here before they begin that process of the collation?
Well, if it gets too rowdy, and considering that every candidate and party that participates in the election has a right to have a candidate, if he submitted or the party submitted a list of candidates before the deadline, so potentially in some units you can have 48 persons. That's just the party agents. So the media, accredited observers are still entitled to be there, and accredited voters still have a right to be there. So if it gets too rowdy, then the presiding officer, along with the security officers, can sort things out and make sure things are calm. If anybody is disruptive, he has a right to walk the person out of the polling unit. But even if you have 100 people and they're all well behaved, they're all orderly, fine, the more the merrier. Then we'll do this thing out. So that it's a people's thing, the citizens' thing. People should see the process, and we've tried to increase the transparency. So the law requires us to give resources to the policeman on duty there and to all the party agents. But this EC80E is not a requirement of the law. It's just in the inner guidelines for purpose of transparency. EC80E, the people's result sheet.
Not from E60 that you said?
E60E.
Come again?
EC60E.
E60E.
60E, yes.
It's no more from EC8.
No, EC8A is the polling unit result.
Okay.
B is the collated result. C is the local government collation. E is the final collation. But this one is just what we colloquially call the people's result sheet, which is pasted in every polling unit at the end of the day. So
and that's when you said people can take shots.
They're free to.
I think Mr. Amba wants to explain another process for us.
Yes, the underlying word there is to make the environment conducive for the processes that have just been mentioned, sorting and counting, to take place. So there had been a lot of training, collaboration between the security agencies and the INEC officials. The security agencies, they know their limitations, they know their schedule of duties and where the INEC schedule of duty, even though there's that collaboration. But I can assure you that first and foremost, the underlying factor is to make the environment conducive for these activities to take place, and that is what the police is doing.
The word conducive, what of situations whereby, because I think I noticed that in 2015, in some polling units, while this counting is taking place, sorting out and counting is taking place, you hear the registration officer counting for party A, B, C, and then the crowd will be clapping or cheering or whatever. Is that allowed?
Well, thank God you said it was in 2015. And now we are in 2018. There have been a lot of improvement. And everybody has been educated, both the security agencies, both the electors, those that are watching. They know that all what they need is to have a decent atmosphere for the process.
Decent atmosphere or conducive atmosphere, is any noise of whatever sort allowed? That's what I think we should get clear.
I think the noise is relative. But if you are applauding that the situation is a successful situation, you are permitted. But if the noise has to do with any commission of an offense, then it is not allowed.
It's quite right. Such noise cannot be disruptive of the process. And there's no hard and fast rule. The presiding officer has a leeway If he thinks it's not disturbing the process, all well and good, in conjunction with the security personnel, with the police officer there. In some cases, they join you in the counting. X, 1, 2 for Y. They join you. It's almost a carnival kind of atmosphere in some cases. There might be noise, but there's no rowdiness. I think that's on the understanding of it being conducive.
Abu Hamisu.
Yes.
You want to come in here?
Yeah, well, I've observed quite a number of elections, and the way Mr. Saze explaining, and that is what we normally see. You have two types of noise. The one that I no go agree, I no go agree. It means security will have to step in to say, follow the normal process of I no go agree, not disrupting the process. Then you have the one that some persons are celebrating because their candidate is leading. In such a situation, you can't really do anything because, as is rightly said, they join in counting because they are always happy saying that, okay, the figure has exceeded that of say candidate A that they thought was leading. So at that point in time, you hear them chorusing, and some of them will come and equally entertain people there. So once it is not disruptive of the process, it is allowed because it is part of the entire thing that go into the process. But again, the one that will disrupt the process is quickly addressed.
Now, let's look at the general atmosphere. Even though in the morning, during the beginning, we are told everything is so peaceful. Now we are at the stage of counting, sorting out. How peaceful is the entire state as we speak?
Well, my reports, there has been no adverse reports of any disruption of the peace. I think the peaceful atmosphere has continued. And you see, in analyzing an election, you just don't need to look at what happened on election day itself. In the build-up, unlike the last election we did in Ekiti, for example, Osun was relatively peaceful. There was no attack on leading candidates or any candidates, really. There was no attack. There was no serious breach or threats to the breach of the peace. But I think the commissioner will even throw more light in this regards. But so far, from my situation room reports from across the whole state, the peace has been maintained. It's still yet critical time, especially when it comes to once the results are coming out and the collation has commenced. There's still potential for danger, potential for disruption. But even places where border towns and certain areas that in the past people have been wary and they were flagged up before, there was a risk assessment done and preventive measures were put in place to checkmate, and as the commissioner said earlier, a lot of intelligence work got into it to prevent and preempt any likelihood of breakdown of law and order. But certainly we have not had any reports of a breakdown of law and order in any particular place, certainly not. But maybe he...
Go ahead.
To add to that, I think leadership has to do with the success you've had so far. If you compare the activities in Ekiti and Osun State, my Inspector General of Police, IGP Idris, had commended the good people of Osun State for maintaining the peace, and equally those that are core participants. Because even when you look at the process from the campaigning period, they were doing their campaign almost side by side with each other. There was no problem. So we had since we had a very peaceful campaign period, we were definitely sure that the D-Day, which is today, was going to be very peaceful. We are already preparing for the post-election period.
Exactly, that's where, as we're approaching the stage whereby results will be declared, what contingency arrangements have you made?
Well, like I said, it's really, we've already set out everything. Like those, immediately after the polling area, we know we have to move some of our personnel. But before then, there are key points that we have men that are on fixed routine patrol. Then the vehicular patrol. The specialized units like the CTU, counterterrorism, the Special Protection Unit, and other specialized units from sister agencies would be used to ensure that there is proper security within the collation and counting centers. If we do that, then our job is, as we have done that, our job is completed.
Mr. Abu Hamid, so as we approach that process, or that stage whereby results will be declared,
Yes.
what is your advice?
Well, the advice is maintaining vigilance. Maintaining vigilance, because part of the strategy, politicians don't easily give up. I'm sorry to say this, and they are very terrible set of people, because what they want is win, win, win. They don't want to lose any election. But if you go into any contest, it's either you win or you lose. So we should prepare our mind, and that is why everybody was given level playing ground so that you can canvass for vote and support, and that has been done relatively successfully. And then the atmosphere so far, it is conveying something that okay. They really want to maintain the pace in Osun State. That is, I want to align myself with what you said earlier on, that the leadership equally has a role to play. When you behave responsibly, your followership would equally do the same thing. But as a leader, by the time you start making inflammatory remarks that is capable of breaching peace, simply because you know that maybe the election will not go your way, you are only creating alibi that will lead to situations that will even consume the hard work of the toiling masses that are on the street looking for what to eat. And that is not what we're saying now. But again, because drugs are cheap in Nigeria, and nobody value life, especially most of the people that used to call themselves politicians. So they could get desperate young people that could be given little cash here and there, and thank God they've banned codeine. Yeah, but we know that they are migrating to other substances. Then, now that easily sway young people that are desperate to go and do some certain things that will breach the peace. But if you are sure that if you go do it, you will not come back without being arrested, then that becomes a disincentive for you to go and do what they ask you to do. Just like the way Achebe said, he said it is un-African to refuse a caller's call, but it is not un-African to refuse to do what the caller asks you to do. So you may decide to collect the money. By the time you see the red beret, you know that, man, there is a danger. So you just go as if you want to do it and you go away. So the security personnel, their position, their presence is equally deterring a lot of people. So the peace we are seeing is not given. It's not as if people don't want to cause mayhem. No, it is when actors realize that the cost of equally going out there to cause mayhem is greater than not causing mayhem. So it becomes a given. So people will say everywhere is peaceful. No, it's because of the presence of this man. If you withdraw some of these men today, I bet you before you know it, they'll start burning tires and then the public buildings, and before you know it, because nobody wants the process to be concluded, especially in this land that the premium is very high.
As we prepare to go back to Oshobo, our Oshundusa's studio in Oshobo, gentlemen, I would want you to comment on the role of the media so far, from yesterday to today. What are your takes on the various media that we've heard, seen, heard, particularly the social media that everybody seems to have fears on? Mr. Osadio.
Yes, we've been since Monday accrediting media, both online, mainstream, print media that expressed interest in monitoring the elections, and we had over 200 media organizations, more than 600 journalists from 200 media organizations, both local and foreign, that were interested in monitoring the process. And so far, no adverse reports have been received. I think generally the media, let me deal first of all with mainstream media, have been very fair, very reasonable in their reporting. One or two people have made mistakes, especially regarding this ban on or restriction on the use of cellular camera phones and cameras in the polling booth, polling cubicle. Quite a number of them could not draw the distinction between the cubicle and the polling unit, and that led to some apprehension and adverse comments. But I'm happy most people now see this distinction, and it is the same media, many other correspondents and media personnel who have actually, even without our prompting, said no. Quite a number of stations have been playing the clip by the chairman of the commission stating that restriction, that ban, and that has helped a great deal. But so far so good. We've been monitoring the social media as well, and quite a number of the things that have come out have been fair enough. There have been some few insults, especially as regarding qualification, non-qualification, performance, non-performance, a bit about vote buying. But you recall that in the last election, governorship election we had, the NBC had to come down hard on one or two radio stations. We haven't seen that in Osun. So I think that is kudos to the media. I think it shows that a level of maturity has come in, and the social media, there's still some exuberance in the social media, but so far not quite with the vitriolic way that things have been going, not quite with the insults, not quite with the hate speech and fake, not too much of that fake news that we saw in some previous elections. So even the social media, there's been, I use the word, some restraint and some reasonableness about how they've gone about it. But it's not yet over. So let us see with the declaration of results, let us see the next stage of the process, how the media, social media responds to it. But we've tried as much as possible to also use social media for the positive impact it can have. And we dedicated a number for vote buying. Media platforms are open for reporting late arrival of materials, disruption of the process and things like that. And so far, so good. And we still will maintain that they will use social media to pass out information, official information, so that as a check to hate speech, as a check to the kind of fake news or false information that some people might want to use social media for.
Do you see any likelihood of the social media being inimical to that stage, or whereby the form EC, the people's form, as you call it,
the people's result form? People's
result form can be transmitted unauthorized?
Well, no, the truth is that we don't we don't say the whole essence of pasting, you can take photographs and post, but a word of caution in that regard, that may not be the final result. The law says that the returning officer has the final say in terms of total number of votes cast. If, for example, at the end of the day we find out that in that particular unit, the total number of accredited voters is less than the total number of valid votes allegedly cast, that result will be cancelled. It shows on the face of it that there's a problem. It could be an error of miscalculation, it could be anything, but it's not a result it's a result that will impugn the integrity of the whole thing, so that might be cancelled. And if it's going to have an overall effect at the end of the day, that will not be considered. So it's raw data. You must process data. It's a raw information. The law, rightly or wrongly, has given the right to the returning officer, where there's a complaint, to look at things. There might be a wrong tabulation of results, so he has a right to tabulate properly. Maybe wrong arithmetic and things like that. He has a right to tabulate. So that is the caution you must exercise when using that. So
at the end of the day, it's only his result that matters.
It is the result declared by the returning officer at the end of the day. He may be wrong, and the law acknowledges that, but says, look, when he is wrong, then the only way of challenging it is through the process of election petition.
Please, Mr.
Well, equally, we have to appreciate the media too. So far, the security agencies have been receiving commendation, and this is an added incentive for us to work towards a greater height. And we thank God the people are now having confidence in the Nigerian police force. So I can assure you that my Inspector General of Police will do his best to sustain what we have on the ground, and if not, improve on it.
Yeah, I want to congratulate the people of Osun State because though the media has a way of manipulating events, you have to at least conduct yourself in certain ways before.
The media reflects events.
Yes.
Not manipulating.
No. So, you see, the issue of fake news, is manipulation of what never existed or what exists. So what I'm saying is the people of Osun State and equally the candidate were able to conduct themselves in a reasonable manner, and the media has no option than to reflect such. So we know that equally the people that used to use.
So far, do you think the media has done well?
No, the media has done well.
Thank you. Oluwole Osaze Ozi, Director of Voter Education, INEC, thank you so much for your time. I remain in any way, and Commissioner, please. Asuko Amba, thank you so very much for your time, even though you're still going to remain with us. And Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, we are not closing, but we are just thanking them for being here with us. At this point, we go back to our Osun Desai studio in Oshobo for more analysis and updates.
Thank you, Kudu. Thank you, Kudu. Now I'll take you on, Dr. Ojoni. So many things have been said in our Oshun Decide studio in Abuja. Now, there are reports about things going on, free and fair, no violence. But then 2 arrests have been made, confirmed from what we've been listening to in our Abuja studio. Now, I would want you to describe the effect of the robust security arrangements on ground here in the States. We have so many, good number of the presence of security personnel. How did this translate to ensure this free and fair that we've been saying so far?
Really, we must commend the security arrangement that we have seen on ground. Of course, as I said earlier, you have people who are desperate, who will want to do one thing or the other to beat the system. But if you are talking about just 2 cases of arrest, that is a pocket of arrest compared to the number of local government and the polling units and the wards that we have in the state. So I think what we have seen so far with the security arrangement is perfectly organized and okay.
There is an improvement from previous
there is
elections.
An improvement from previous elections, no doubt.
Okay, Semi, let's take you on your constituency. You are a young man, and we know that the Not Too Young to Run bill is here now with us. So many young persons would want to even come on board in subsequent elections. We are moving towards the 2019 general elections, and many young ones will want to come on board. And then that will result to the registration of more political parties. On ground now, we have 91. What's your take on that? How can that be controlled that we won't even have more?
Okay, I believe that I'm an advocate of opening up the political space for not only young people, for certain marginalized groups. Part of them are women and even people living with disabilities, so that at least we can have an all-inclusive government. But the truth of the matter is, the way we are going, if we continue to register political parties without clear-cut provisions in our constitution, we may have something very difficult on our hands to deal with in the nearest future. With the 48 political parties that we have today, I believe that, well, INEC has been able to design the ballot in such a way that it's still simple enough. But maybe it will get to a point where we'll be having booklets as our ballot papers, and God forbid, that we have such a thing. So I feel that the 91 we have right now, to a lot of analysts, is too much. It's too much. And I believe that as provided for in the Constitution as of now, INEC cannot stop anybody who meets the requirement for registering political parties. I believe that the National Assembly should critically look into this and even seek expert opinion if need be. We have copied democracy from outside Nigeria, and in advanced democracies, I think there are things you have to meet. There are factors that you have to meet before you can be listed as a national party. So I want to believe that maybe it will be to come in such a way of maybe having certain number of seats in the houses of assembly, having certain number of seats in the House of Reps, having certain number of seats maybe in the Senate. Then that can make a party to be listed as a national party. Because if...
Thank you very much, Semi. We're glad to have you join us in Oshun Decide studio here in Osogbo, and Dr. Olabode Ojuni. We thank you both for coming. We'll now take the special report on Ile-Ife. Ile-Ife in Osun State is regarded as the cradle of the Yoruba race. The ancient city occupies a special position in the Nigerian history. In this report, Rotimi Akamo examines the uniqueness of Ile-Ife among other cities and towns.
Ile-Ife is believed to be as old as the origin of man. The ancient city is the source of Yorubas, both at home and diaspora. The cities boast about 401 divinities, of which are Odudua, Oromiyan, Oluorogbo, Maremi, Ifa Temple, Obatala, Osara, among others. Out of these gods and goddesses, Oni of Ife is the only living god among them. The political administration has the honor of Ife as the paramount head with 16 chiefs. The uniqueness of the city could be attributed to its historical antecedents.
This is the cradle of the entire Yoruba people, and not only the Yoruba people, the cradle of civilization, where it all began. So the head is always very taken care of in a very peculiar manner, and this is this head, the spiritual nerve center for the entire black people. It's very critical for us to know that this is where it all began. It is very critical for all of us to know that the peculiarity of Yoruba people can never be overemphasized. The peculiarity of Yoruba people is very key, and God has actually blessed us with a lot of unique things in Yoruba land.
A professor of history, Obafemi Awolowo University, Professor Akin Alao, and director of Natural History Museum, Obafemi Awolowo University, Professor Adisa Ogunfolakan, highlighted many reasons why Ile-Ife is a sacred city and natural capital of Yoruba race.
Occupies a preeminent position in the community of towns, societies, and kingdoms in Yoruba land. Ile-Ife is central to every understanding about the Yoruba, either here or in the diaspora. When we speak of Yoruba, we are speaking of Ile-Ife, and the antiquity of Ile-Ife has been well established. So Ile-Ife is a unique site in Yoruba land. Archaeological findings and datings point in the direction of Ile-Ife as the site of an ancient civilization, the civilization of the Yoruba.
It's important because looking at the history of Ife and looking at the associated history with the other Yoruba people, we see that Ife is unique. It's unique in the sense that, one, the Ifa corpus talk much about Ife. And in any other Yoruba towns, genuine Yoruba towns, the Ifa that establishes them always link them to Ife. And in Yoruba history, in other Yoruba towns, whatever their history, they always link them to Ife. When it comes to the issue of chieftaincy title, they always, those that receives their crown from Ife are always the most genuine crown in Yoruba land.
The city has many academic institutions, such as the prestigious Obafemi Awolowo University, Odudua University, Ife Polytechnic, among other institutions within the ancient city of Ile-Ife. The people of Ile-Ife accommodate other tribes from all the nooks and crannies of the country.
It's a very good town. It's peace town. Because since 1976, how I living in Ile-Ife, I no regret. I mean, okay. All the Hausa community, they are okay.
And being Ile-Ife 20 years, and doing business in Ile-Ife, no problem for Ile-Ife. And Ife people love me, and I love them, and they marry. We are married together. They are married my sister. I married their sister too, and we'll be friends. And they love me, and I love them.
Aside from the fact that Ife people still preserve their cultural heritage through traditional worshiping and series of festivals, Christianity and Islamic religions are being practiced in the ancient city of Ile-Ife without rancor. Rotimi Akamon, NTA News.
Okay. Glad to have you back in the studio. That was a special on Ile-Ife. I now have a new set of discussants with me in the studio. I have the Deputy Commandant General Operations, Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, Ilari Madu. So you're welcome to Osun Decide studio.
Thank you, madam.
I also have in the studio the first Public Relations Officer, the National Council for Women's Society, Madam Safia Ibrahim Ogo. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, I would like to start with you, Mr. Madu. What is the situation when we talk about security at the various polling units across Osun State?
Thank you, madam. Since morning that I've been moving around, and with the report I've been getting from my people across the voting areas or the local government areas in Osun, reports we have been getting has been fulfilling, especially to us, that we thank God we have not had any untoward incidents like violence. We have not been having, have not had any violent reports coming from any part of the local government areas in the state. And I should say that I thank Osun people for living by their name. You know, it's a land of virtue, and the people here are great and they are peaceful. Security agents, we have not had any problem at all. I think this is coming from what we picked from Ekiti State, what happened there, and we learned our lessons there, and we have brought it to bear on what is happening in Osun State. And the people themselves being loving and peaceful people, so we have not had any problem. So far, so good.
Okay, Madam Safia, what can you say about the security situation? You've gone round some of the polling units too.
Well, for the women that were deployed from the Council for Women's Societies, from what we observe, we give kudos to the security agencies. We saw the security agencies working in harmony, working together. But the good news that Nigerian women have observed in Osun State is the deployment of more female security agents. We discovered that the Nigerian police, the civil defense, deployed women and women of competence. And that has accounted today to the peaceful election process in Osun State, because these women that were deployed by civil defense and the Nigerian police, the IG, were on their toes, giving tight security, adequate security to the process. And you can see an improvement in security as against previous election due to these women that were deployed.
So the presence of more women made the polling units more friendly and more conducive.
Yes, you can imagine some polling units, they had like 3 civil defense, 3 police women, and they were in charge. They were even the apex lead officers that were taking lead, and you could see the agility.
Okay, now that sorting is ongoing and counting and all that, what is the situation like?
The situation on ground is that accreditation of voting is simultaneous. And why was it so? It was due to the large turnout of voters. Again, Nigerian women recorded victory. Victory for democracy in Nigeria, where the turnout of women in almost all the polling units in Osun State, the turnout of women were in bulk, clearly shows, one, that the Nigerian women, particularly in Osun State, are the ones entrenching democracy. It shows again, women are the bulk of voters. It means that Nigerian woman is the one making governance.
Thank you, Madam Safia. Let's now take a A live report from Adebola, Brooklyn, Sunday. Not to expatiate on what you're saying about women, is going to give us a report about voting and sorting. We will not be joining Adebola, Brooklyn, Sunday. He's not ready for us yet. We'll be joining Hami Surugo.
Okay, studio, we are back in the Salvation Army polling unit. That is in Oshobo local government area, close to Ataoja's palace. Behind me are a group of women who insisted that I must talk to them. They must dance for me, they must sing for me. You know why? Because simply the voting has been concluded. Counting has ended. The results have been declared at the polling unit, and they are happy their candidate has won. Quite happy people, they are beautiful, happy people. But then obviously, a lot of things happened before the conclusion of the voting. There was peace. There was organization. Ability participated. Virtually all category of people that are supposed to participate in the election were there, and they participated. It was successful. I have some of them I'll talk to. Madam, come. How about the attention of the women? Did the women come out? How happy are you with the election? You are happy. You are happy.
We sincerely apologize for the bad audio and freezing pictures in that report, but we could get from Hami Surugo that women turned out, and his report was coming in from the Ataoja's palace in Oshobo. And now we'll join Adebola, Brooklyn, Sunday in Ede.
Here in Orisun Barre polling unit 007 Ward 5 in Orita Isu, Ede South Local Government area of Osun State, all the 792 registered voters have cast their ballots about 1 hour before the stipulated time. Most of them are seated as they await sorting and counting. Theophilus Ojo is one of them. Mr. Theophilus, have you voted?
Yes, I've voted. We have been educated to stay behind, to defend our votes, so that after that we can leave the polling units.
With me is the Nigeria representative of AU ECOSOC, Dr. Tunji Ashaolu. He's one of the foreign election observers. Can you tell us your observation so far?
I think people, to some extent, they know what they want. You know, when you know what you want, of course, you also stay with it, or you stand by it, because you know that the life itself will not give you what you want or to replace the demand of it. I think basically that is how good is also be looking at it. And to some extent, we can also say that ANEC has also been doing their job in terms of, educating people, because, it's no longer the business as usual when people are not even so interested, or maybe people will just vote and from there they will turn back, not mindful of what is happening thereafter. So I can say that as far as the education is concerned, the ANEC is they are trying, and I think they are also be enjoying our support, because this is what we have been doing, in collaboration in terms of sensitizing people to also know their rights, to see how they can also, stay by their foot.
And when it was time for sorting and collation, anxiety dominated the scene.
92, 93.
Orisun Barre is one of the 3,010 polling units in the state.
Yes, that report from Adebola was telling us about voting in Ede, and then that sorting has commenced. We just want to go back to Mr. Madu. Now that sorting is on, how is the security personnel on ground going to ensure that there is peaceful conduct from voters that are still around polling units?
I said earlier that we thank God and I thank the people of Osun State for remaining peaceful. And up to the time before I walked into the room here, I have not received any report on any violence. And as people are sitting, waiting for the results, the security agents are just near the polling or near those counting centers to ensure that, this ballot box snatching or people coming to foment trouble. If they know that it's not going their way, they may come to disrupt that. And up till now, we have not had anything like that. And we thank God. And, before we went off, my sister was talking about women and their contribution to peace in Nigeria, even among the security. We don't have women in security agencies. We don't see women as female. All of us are the same training. But being our mothers, there's a way they operate. They are better at times than men. So we said gentlemen. And when we say good morning, sir, we don't say good morning, ma. So all of us are the same. We don't see any person in staff as women. But
so like we have in the media, so we'll say gentlemen of the press.
Gentlemen of the press, yes, everywhere. But this one, because of the training given to them. And our mothers have patience. They can stay, they guide. We are like their children. So whatever they do, we also have softer approach, in how we deal with them. And they also have a way of talking to us as their children. So whatever, I thank the women in Nigeria for coming out and ensuring we have proper democracy in Nigeria.
Okay, Madam Sophia. Now that sorting is going on, what advice we would want to give to the women? In that report from Adibola said by the time sorting started, people were shouting and all that. So how would you want them to maintain calmness, especially the women?
Well, we would like to thank them and that this peaceful atmosphere demonstrated today at the polling unit, both men and women, should be maintained towards achieving the 2019 general election. Osun State election is a direction, and the direction shows that the narratives has been changed. No vote buying, no violence, peaceful, free, fair for now. And we want that tempo to be maintained to 2019 to give women the chance that we want to take.
People are expectant now.
Yes.
Now, especially with sorting
ongoing.
So you've asked that people should just continue in that peaceful spirit and conduct.
Yeah.
Now, talking about 2019 general elections, we'll have more states coming on board. We had that of Anambra last year, Ekiti this year. Now, presently, Osun is deciding who the next governor is. What do you want to advise? What is your advice to women so that they can equally demonstrate the same thing when it comes to the 2019 general elections?
Well, the advice from the council and our own organization is that the women should come out in large number. The women should not feel that there's going to be intimidation because Osun, the security nature and the apparatus deployed. And again, we're even happy that it is just about 18,000, compared to what we had in the past. So it means, and there's a lot of improvement here. It means even if you send few security for the 2019, we can still achieve this peaceful coexistence between the security and the harmonious working relationship we saw displayed today. That will encourage more women to come out and vote in large numbers. And we are also calling on government to focus on Nigerians' women's adequate support for this process. Women are key drivers in the democratic process, and women should be given opportunity to serve under the request of the council, which is the 50 2050 agenda for 2019. I will not rest by not saying this. Mr. President of the Federal Republic
Okay,
of
Madam
Nigeria,
Safia, before we go on, let's take a special report on economic potential of Osun State.
This is the famous Osun Osogbo Festival that holds every August for centuries, attracting thousands of visitors and tourists alike to Osun State.
Apart from promoting culture, we are promoting tourism. We are bringing commerce to Osogbo land. We are bringing commerce to Osogbo land. And we are bringing more recognition to this city.
Everything about it is, it's unique. It's very special, very important for the Yoruba.
Year in, year out, Osun Osogbo has increasingly developed to become one of the highest tourist destinations in the country. Successive governments have come up with policies and programs to harness the potentials of the state. And that explains why festivals like Osun Osogbo is enjoying private sector participation. Apart from Osun Osogbo, Ede is known for Shango Festival, while Egungun Festival had been rebranded in Iwo land to become another economic hub and source of income to the state.
Because what we are trying to do next year is to find a field and people will be using money so that we can create IGR for the states.
Ile-Ife equally draws thousands of people to Olojo Festival, just like the annual Ifa Festival. These festivals and other tourist sites, including the Olumiri waterfalls in Erin-Ijesha and the Kirijiwo site in Igbajo, among others, all sum up to make tourism one of the mainstays of Osun economy, generating income to the government, private sector, and individuals.
Apart from the natural indigo dyeing processing and so on and so forth, then we have other artworks that they are so beautiful.
Agriculture and trade are the top two economic earners in this state. Osun economy also thrives in trades, as almost every household engages in one form of petty trade or the other.
I thank God I feed my children, then I have a building, then I continue my living in good condition. I don't regret to be mechanic.
The fact that Osun State hosts the National Park Control Center, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, the international breweries in Ilesha, and more than 15 other tertiary institutions, a large concentration of bureaucrats and technocrats has boosted economic activities. The creation of Osun State in 1991, which brought about the paraphernalia of government at the state and national levels, changed the economic status of the people, especially in Osogbo, the state capital. In Osogbo, Tope Alabi, NTA News.
That report was on economic potential of Osun State that is telling us that there is so much potential in Osun State, and the next person coming in as the governor has so many things to offer to the people. I have another person in the studio joining me, Cynthia Mbamalu, watching the vote, Yaga Africa. You're welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you for having me.
Now you've been watching the vote from the name of your outfit. Yeah. What exactly has happened in the various polling units? We want to hear from you.
Okay, thank you. So I think one is to commend the people of Osun for a very peaceful voting process, because I went around and we have our observers in every local government in about 250 polling units, and we've seen peaceful conduct across the different local governments. I think one thing that stands out is the fact that we had much early opening of polls in Osun, even better than we had in Ekiti. So our data shows us that as early as 9 a.m., 94% of polling units had commenced accreditation and voting. which was an improvement compared to Ekiti. So you had early opening of polls. You also had the card reader is one very important election material, it's a sensitive material that ought to be present. And our observers could tell us that in 100% of the polling units, the card reader was present. And that shows
and it worked.
It worked. It functioned all day. At some places where it had a little problem, they called the tech support and it was replaced. So it means that INEC was actually on standby to ensure that the card readers were implemented. So if we look at looking around, we've seen that there's been some improvements. We know voting, some places won't conclude voting as planned by 2 because you have voters turnout. I think it's important to note that we had voters come out and vote in their numbers to queue in a very peaceful and orderly manner. Also, the presence of political parties, usually you don't see a lot of parties deploying agents. In Ekiti, we could only see maybe the APC, PDP agents. We had more of that at polling unit. But this time around, at least the polling units were in an average of 7 party agents for different parties were seen, which shows that more parties are getting conscious of that because you need party agents to watch the process. But beyond that is the issue of the whole vote buying and all, because our pre-election report had shown that there was voter inducement in different local governments, and INEC had gone ahead to say that you can't have your phones at the voting polling the voting booths, where you'll be voting, so that it reduces the number of people that can take pictures. Now, from the observations we've seen, you'd see that while INEC has made some efforts to do that, there are people that still look for ways to ensure that they can buy or sell votes. And I think one of the things that one of our recommendation is to INEC is on the level, the configuration of polling units, because the way you set a polling unit, for instance, determines if people can see how a voter casts their ballot. And then also the folding, the presiding officers need to be more emphatic on the voters that you must fold, you must roll. Don't fold, because some polling units, people fold in such a way that someone else can see who they have voted for. And that is against our rule and promoting the secrecy of the ballot. So I think that was one thing we saw. And at least we had lesser cases of money exchanging hand at the polling units. And for places that was happening, it's in the streets. So it means even political parties are becoming aware. Interestingly, security had arrested some people, which is an improvement compared to Ekiti. We didn't have reports on arrests on elections day, but today you see the security outfits have been going out, and on Twitter you see pictures of people arrested, which I think is because the more you arrest, the faster you deter such a conduct, or you clean up or sanitize the process.
Yes,
so
let me take Mr. Madu on that. Thank you, Cynthia. You mentioned some things about people conducting themselves, smart card readers, walking and all that. But Mr. Madu, she said that people conducted themselves peacefully, and she just commended the security personnel. Now, what would you want others to do now that sorting is ongoing, so that what the issues she has raised would definitely be sustained?
Yes, nothing much, just continue to encourage them to comport themselves well. That's the people that will be around the police stations up till now. And you mentioned before that some people were making noise. I think people were jubilating when a ward's result or one station's result was being announced. And it was shown, and people were just making noise, rejoicing that maybe their candidate won. But what we watch out for is those things should not turn violent. You know, it should not turn violent. People should continue to conduct themselves, and everybody will have it all good for all of us and for the Nigeria, for the country.
Have a call. Join him now. Okay, there's a question for you, Mr. Madu, from one of...
a call. Sorry, a call.
A call is coming in for you. We would like you to listen and answer.
So it's not for me.
Put it.
Put it.
Hello?
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 Hello? Hello?
Hello? Hello? Taiwo, you are on.
Hello?
Hello, Taiwo, you are on.
What is your director doing now? He should have let the presenter know that you want to come up.
Please let us continue.
Hello,
Yes.
we are not getting that call right. We were thinking probably there are some situation reports from the polling unit. So, Mr. Maju, please, you can go on.
Yes, third, we are sustaining what we presently have, and the security agents, what they are doing is staying off to ensure that some of those celebrations don't turn violent. And we thank God, like my sister said, that city has mentioned that what happened in Ekiti, maybe it has taught us a lesson, a good one, and things are just going well by the minute.
So with this,
and we continue to impress on them. Please hold on to what we have now, that is peace. Hold on to it, and let us continue behaving the way we are behaving, because if anybody is caught disrupting or trying to damage any government property, we won't allow the person go scot-free. The very heavy hand of the law will be used to visit the person. So as we are preaching peace, we also will not allow any person to turn violent or to cause harm to people that are doing their legal duties in Osun State.
With the election process, moving from one stage to the other gradually and smoothly from reports, what is the essence of this on our electoral process in Nigeria?
Yeah, I think what is important is the fact that one, Osun State is the seventh off-cycle elections we've had since 2015 general elections, and the last before the 2019 elections. So this gives us a good sense of how to plan for 2019. One way we can use it to assess INEC preparation, even though every state has its own peculiarities when it comes to elections. We can't use Osun to determine how 2019, because 2019 is national, right? Osun is just a state. But at least we have a first sense of what is happening and how we want to engage towards 2019. From Osun, we're learning lessons already. I think one of the things that we need to also push for is the fact that we need the electoral amendment to actually be passed into law. Because what that does is it enables the deployment of technology to promote electoral integrity. And the e-collation and transmission platform INEC has been piloting would add some credibility in the process. Because what that does is, as collation starts from the polling unit, INEC, as the votes are counted at the polling unit and transmitted to the ward and LGA levels, INEC also has access in their centralized database. They can view this, so it provides a level of oversight. So with that, in the national elections, what that means is parties can even rely on the results that were transmitted from the polling unit if anything goes wrong in the collation process. Now, so it creates that kind of...
Let me take you on your comments now, and then your earlier comment that you have more party agents at the polling units. In Osun State, there are 48 political parties, and 42 out of the 48 presented adequate party agents. Now, this is really an improvement from what we've been having. Now, these party agents, they are to monitor as they sort out, as they count and collation and all that. So now that they are there, what do you really want them to do? What will be your comment on their presence there? Some of them are just there, and they are, to ensure that they monitor, they get, the papers, and they, kind of compare the figures. So what would you want them to really do so that things will move on and then it will end successfully?
Yeah, I think one major role of the party agent is vigilance, to represent his or her party at the polling unit. Now, that is why party agents are supposed to be present from opening to the close of polls. One of the things we expect from party agents is to watch the voting and the counting process, especially now that most polling units are counting the ballots, to watch that. Now, party agents also have a right to demand for recount if they are not comfortable with the counting. So they can also demand from INEC that, oh, I need a recount. I didn't follow through some of your counting. They can get that one request anyway. They can ask more than once. And then they are supposed to countersign the form EC8A, which is the elections result form, result sheet. They're meant to countersign that and have a copy of that, because that also is evidence for parties. Beyond that, INEC has said that polling units would have the form EC60E posted. That's what we call the people's result sheet. They're also supposed to ensure that that is there so that their supporters can come and see how that is posted. Party agents should also follow through the collation. Most times, you see more of them at the polling units, but when you go to ward, it trickles down. LGA collation, it trickles down. Then most people want to go to the state. But they have a role to follow through the process from the polling unit to the ward to the LGA. And beyond that, we actually had incidents of some party agents that were hostile to some observers in some polling. I think party agents need to appreciate that observers are there to also help their work, because the observers are meant to keep watch on the process. And if their parties are shortchanged, the observers report would highlight and indicate that. So I think they play a major role to represent their parties, not to compromise. Because sometimes you see reports of party agents at the point of counting compromising, trying to make bargains to give their votes to a party that has more votes. Now that is against the principles and ethics of party agents deployed. Now, if they don't follow through,
do they have any rights to come out and complain or say otherwise to the reports we've been having?
No, they don't. So for instance, in Ekiti, the watching the votes findings, we verified that the results in Ekiti were actually accurate. And our reports show that in the polling units, party agents, both APC, PDP party agents, signed the result sheets, countersigned, and collected the form. Because when you sign, what you do is you accept. At the collation, because we also deploy collation observers, we will have 13 the TLGA collations. One of the things you want to observe is, are the party agents okay with the result there? Because when your party agent sign and accepts the result and goes back with a copy, it doesn't make sense at the end of the day the parties to come and say, oh no, we don't agree. So the question is for the parties, who are you deploying? Are you deploying people you have trained and you trust to protect the interest of your party, or are you deploying people that do not have the capacity to actually represent your party at the polling unit? So the party agent, they do have a role to play, and if you countersign and accept a result sheet, and you take it back to your party, that is evidence, because the result sheet has the results for every party written on the form. So they have a role to play, and they can't, at the end of the day, claim not to accept it if at the polling unit they accepted the result. But beyond that, they should also remember that they are not immune from being arrested if they conduct themselves poorly.
Okay, Cynthia,
so
thank you.
If you conduct yourself poorly, you'll be arrested.
What do you want to say on that about party agents, in their conduct and ensuring that they follow through so that we have
ours is just to protect the materials deployed for the election and to ensure that those that are there for the election, both the voters and the officials. So we give them adequate security. That is ours. Until reports come to us on somebody trying to breach the security, we observe something untoward, then we take action. So they know we are there. So any person that wants to foment trouble, we go pick him up.
Okay, so thank you very much. We now have a report on counting in Abuja. Okay, the report is not ready yet, and we now join our Osun Decide studio in Abuja with Kudu standing by. Kudu, is over to you.
Thank you, Kemi, for that robust discussion. Our panelists in Abuja, the Opportunity Decide Studio here in Abuja are still here. Oluwole Osaze Uzi, Director of Voter Education, INEC. Asuko Mba, Commissioner of Police Counter-Terrorism Unit, Department of Operations, Force Headquarters, is also still here. Our political scientist, Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, is also here. The gentlemen had the opportunity to also reach out to their various field officers in Osun State, and before we round off, finally, the studio discussions. We'll get to hear from them what they were able to gather from the field, particularly INEC.
Well, thank you. The process is really far gone now in terms of sorting and counting of the ballots. And in fact, some units have already declared results. So it's in line with what we expected, so that these things can be done expeditiously. And the process, the reports are generally around the whole state, the process was quite smooth. Out of the 3,700 and something polling units and voting points, I think the only two so far that we're aware of issue of violence or snatching of a ballot paper in Orolu. I think a ballot box and a smart card that were snatched. That's the only confirmed one that we have. Fortunately, our staff are unhurt and voters were unhurt. Nobody was armed folks just came and snatched us. Maybe they're not so happy with the way things went. And then with the one arrest, two arrests we have previously talked about, everything else has gone smoothly. It's as good as it comes.
Well, the issue of the ballots snatching in our local government area and all around the local government area, any reports from the side of the security?
Well, first of all, I have to speak on the arrest. This time around, you can see there is arrest made. 2 suspects were apprehended, and a substantial amount of money was found on them. They've been referred to the investigating unit that is on the ground there. And on the information on snatching of ballot box, I'm yet to really confirm, apart from the confirmation from the INEC official. And I can assure you that, well, we would definitely be on top of the situation to effect arrests and guide against future occurrence.
Mr. Abuja.
Yeah, well, the information out there and which we've been discussing has to do with the calm or the relative peace leading to the final coalition. I mean, at the registration areas before local government, and then the final coalition for announcement. 3 things are designable. First is the conduct of the people. Though we just have few reported incidents of ballot snatching, which is not widespread as we used to witness before. INEC should be commended for that, as well as the security agencies on ground. Because without the collaboration, and without the people behaving themselves, without INEC putting in place mechanisms, without the security agencies being vigilant, I will not have achieved this success. So, by and large, I think the process has been quite peaceful, given the fact that it's only 2 incidents of ballot box snatching.
Well, we have talked earlier about the fact that vote sorting and counting is taking place about this time, and probably we may even have gotten into the process of collation. Let's hear from Usman Aliyu in Oshobo, who is standing by with reports on the collation of ballots.
Where we are now is at Abuja D polling unit in Oshobo Metropolis. Voting has ended. They have started counting the votes of those who casted their ballot. It's part of the collation of result exercise, later of which they will take it to the main office of INEC to collate other results for this 2018 Osun governorship election. Over to you in the studio.
Usman Aliyu, that is a very good update there. And of course, our panelists are still here. What do you make of that update there from Usman Aliyu, Mr. Osaze-Ozi?
It's in line with what we're talking about. As I said earlier, the some units have already declared results where the exercise has been completed, and with that, that comes it brings the process to an end in that particular unit, and then to the next stage of collation of results. Once a unit declares, it goes to the collation center with the material, with everything else, goes to the collation center, and then collation can begin.
How many polling units are we talking about in the entire Osun State? The 3 senatorial districts, around
there are 3,010.
3,010.
And about 700 and something voting points. But
3,010 polling units. Yes. Mr. Amber.
Yes, please. Well, like you see, the process is on, and like I told you, we have men really on the ground to cover all areas of interest, and I don't think there is anything untoward for us to report about. It's all success and success.
Mr. Abuja, what do you make of the atmosphere of that report? There appears to be some noise, but the noise appears to be
healthy one. Yeah, you know, that was what we're trying to really delineate, the healthy noise and the unhealthy noise. And the one you've witnessed is the healthy one, where people, you don't stop people from talking, but what is the impact of this talking on the entire exercise? And how does that affect the work of the ad hoc staff that INEC is using to conduct this election? So once it is not affecting them, though the noise could be deafening, but perhaps you need that deafening to hasten up to equally do your job and then get away from the scene. But by and large, from what we've seen, I think it's something that is highly commendable. The people should be commended for conducting themselves in a peaceful manner, so that they don't even have the cost to invite the law enforcement agents on themselves. So for me, it's highly commendable.
Yeah, Mr. Uzi, let's come back to this reported case, 2 cases of ballot box snatching. What is the implications of that?
Well, I have one confirmed case in Lufon or Olu local government area, and an unconfirmed one from Olorunda. The implication is that, well, 1 out of 3,010, when you add 755 voting points, it's almost an insignificant percentage. It shouldn't happen at all, but it's a human endeavor. These things do happen. People will still try things, and certain people are desperate. But obviously, where we cannot vouch for the integrity of a particular polling unit, then that will not be sequestered, it's void, it will not be counted in the collation, because now we are going to the collation in 332 registration areas. That's where the next stage. And it's only at the end of the day if the result from that polling unit will affect the overall outcome result, which is highly unlikely that you will now start considering the effect that will have. But for now, from what we can see, next to no effect at all. But it just will not, any result from any polling unit that does not have the stamp of integrity and the presiding officer has vouchsafed for it will not be used in the final collation.
So, and if it's not used, it will not affect the result?
Not likely to. It will come. Until we see the whole picture, we cannot state categorically, but almost certainly it will not affect it.
What do we make of the entire process now? Like you said, that you should be going through collation.
Yes. The next stage is the collation in the 332 restaurant area collation centers. So once the result is declared, the presiding officer, the INEC officials are accompanied by the security agents present and the observers, the agents of police, but now go to the next stage, which is the RA collation in 332 restaurant areas, what some people call wards of the state. That's the next stage. There's nothing to make out of it. The collation officers, I think just about all of them are in place and are waiting the polling unit results to come. If there are any objections, any complaints, the collation officer will now entertain those complaints and make administrative judgment as to resolve those complaints if they can be resolved, or take a decision based on those complaints, and they will look at the reports of the presiding officers. But so far, I'm not aware of any adverse complaints from any of the party agents, from anybody really.
Mr. Abuja, have you had any reports of the social media playing the advocate, the devil's advocate, if you like, maybe, if you like, posting the people's form that Mr. Osadiusi was talking about?
Well,
have there have been any cases like that? Have you spoken to any of the observers who are on ground?
Yes, as at the time I reached out to my colleagues on the field, they were still the process of sorting and counting. But as Mr. Uzi rightly pointed out, at this point in time, if the people's result that you are posting is taken from the polling unit, is a healthy one, because these are figures that are easily verifiable because it's coming from a credible source. What we don't want to see is some persons sitting in the comfort of their homes cloning. You know, we have this technology of doing that. They get the original result and they tamper with the figure and they start circulating the fake one. So this is where the danger lies. But if it is the actual result that has been posted at the polling unit, and that is equally what it's meant for, so that it will assist to douse tension. But before the processes are completed, and then you get to the final point that the returning officer is supposed to return or to make a return, the social media would have assisted people to equally get results from the ward level, not what has been transmitted, so that by the time the result is coming out, there will be little or no significant changes in the result. But what I refer to as manipulation of fact or event or issues is what used to happen. Some people will get the original result, but then they will edit it and then they will circulate the fake one. So if you don't have the capacity to differentiate between the authentic result that has been posted at the polling unit or the voting point, then that is an invitation for disaster, because people will start acting based on these two conflicting information, so that INEC credibility will be dented, because at the end of it all, they will say, okay, the new result that is circulating is the fake result that INEC has posted, whereas it is not INEC that posted. So this is one of the dangers in terms of using.
But so far you've not had any
No. So far, there is nothing like that.
Well, at this stage, I think we're into escorting the results from the polling units to the collation center, and a lot of escort is involved. And in doing this escort, we are using the specialized units that are there purely for protection and ensuring that these results are taken to its destination. And the beauty of it is that the IG has introduced what looks like a chain. That means as you are taking off, there is an information at the joint operation duty, and the next, as you are getting to the next point, the next patrol team is giving information that you are just leaving that location, moving towards social location. So there is no broken chain.
It's a complete tracking.
Complete tracking of the movement. So that gives the ability to ensure that everything is adequately protected.
Mr. Osadiusi, is that what is happening?
Yes, that's the architecture, that's the plan, and as far as we can tell, that's exactly what is going on. I don't have any evidence or facts to contradict what he said. That's how it's supposed to be, and as far as I'm aware, that's what's exactly.
Is it how it's supposed to be?
Well, you see, first of all, the security have a plan.
Yes.
As much as it's possible, they give us that a plan of how things are going to be. Yeah. I can't tell. Each locality has its own arrangements. Where, for example, they don't have enough forces from this particular one, they improvise. But there's an awareness of what is to be done. The INEC officials are working in close relationship, in close liaison with the area commanders, with the forces on ground. If there's, for example, if in a reported case where there's a battle, some officers obviously will have gone to do something about that. So sometimes they will not be available for this duty. But there is a very, very good synergy.
Now, I'm not questioning the synergy.
Yes.
But if I did mean our politicians are not the desperate type. Yes. We don't need this long chains of processes, the manpower it will require, the resources that is being deployed to do all of this. Yes. It is something that is really abnormal, but because it is needed in order to ensure that the process is given the credibility that is needed. So we are doing all of this. So it is something that we need to commend a place that they are able to put in place this tracking mechanism so that the results are not diverted. But that it should not even happen in the first place, where people are saying and they will do the right things. You know, Because if you go to advanced countries, you see people, they will move a lot of money, so you don't even know when the
Mr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamis will get there.
Yeah.
At this point, we will certainly be listening and keeping in touch, standing by for the vote sorting out, vote counting, and final collation, and if possible, declaration of results as it comes from Oshogbo and our Osun Desai studio in Oshogbo. Well, now we will round off this part of the transmission from the Osun Desai studio here in Abuja, and I will take this opportunity to say Oluwole Osaze Uzi, Director of Voter Education, INEC, thank you so very much for your time. You've been here since morning, and Commissioner of Police, Asuko Amba, Commissioner of Police Counter-Terrorism Unit, Department of Operations, Force Headquarters of the Nigeria Police Force. Thank you very much for your insights and analysis. Of course, our political analyst, Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu. We can't thank you enough, but we will certainly also say thank you for your valuable contributions to Osun Desai Studio here in Abuja. Like I said, it is here we round it off until we get the latest update from our Oshogbo studios of the Osun Desai Studios. It could be the result, it could be any update. For now, we'll say bye for now.